Hello, and welcome back to this quiet corner of the universe. Tonight, the air is still, and the great noise of the modern world has receded, leaving only the soft hum of silence. Let us use this quiet to travel back, far back, beyond any written word, beyond any king or kingdom, to a time when the human mind was just opening its eyes. It's hard to imagine a world where every mountain, every river, every star in the sky had no name. A world known not through language, but through the pure, unfiltered current of existence. Tonight, let us wonder together. What would it be like to be the first conscious human, to stand on the edge of a world that was entirely, breathtakingly new? If you find this journey suits you, a like or subscribe helps this small signal find other curious minds. There is, of course, no pressure at all. I'm always curious to know where on this planet you are listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's a wonderful thought that we, separated by space and time, can share this moment together. Now, find a comfortable position and let your mind slow to the rhythm of time. Our journey begins. There is a waking, not from a dream, for the language of dreams has not yet been invented, but from a simple darkness. It is a slow return of light, a gentle warming of the skin. Before the eyes open, the world is already present. It is a vibration in the air, the ceaseless thrum of insects that is as constant and unnoticed as the blood moving through one's own veins. It is a scent on the cool morning air, the smell of dust, of dry grass, and the faint, sweet perfume of a flowering acacia somewhere nearby. These are not concepts. They are not smells or sounds. They are simply what is. The eyes open. The world rushes in, a flood of color and shape. Above, the sky is not blue. It is a seamless, aching purity of light that stretches to all ends of sight. Below, the earth is not red. It is a warm, grainy texture under the fingers, a specific hue that deepens where the dew still clings. A line of trees on the horizon is not a forest, but a jagged dark pattern against the growing light. Everything is immediate, absolute. Each perception is a universe unto itself, unconnected by a web of words. A bird calls, a sharp, piercing cry. It does not have a name. It is not a shrike. The sound is simply a signal, a familiar ripple in the air that means the long-fanged cat is not near, that the walking can begin. He rises, a body among others. The small band, perhaps 10, perhaps 20, stirs around him. They are not his family or his tribe. They are the familiar collection of warm bodies he has known since his own beginning. Their presence is a feeling of safety, a shared rhythm of breathing in the dark, a known landscape of faces and forms. Communication is a glance, a turn of the head, a soft grunt that means come, a sharper one that means wait. The vast, complex world of human relation exists, but it is a dance of instinct and intuition, not a conversation. He feels a hollowness in his belly. It is not hunger. It is a dull, persistent ache that commands the legs to move, the eyes to search. The world is a tapestry of these commands. The sight of a certain green vine is a pull on the hands to dig at its root. The gleam of flint is an urge to pick it up, to feel its familiar heft, its sharp possibility. The mind does not think, I can make a tool from this. Instead, the stone itself seems to call to the hand, a memory of motion, of striking one rock against another, a rhythm passed down not through instruction, but through silent imitation. Scientists today still grapple with this emergence. They call it the hard problem of consciousness. They can map the neurons, trace the evolutionary growth of the prefrontal cortex, but they cannot explain the simple, miraculous leap from the processing of information to the subjective feeling of seeing red, or the experience of warmth. When did a complex brain first generate a private, inner world? Was there a first ancestor who looked at his own hand, not as a tool for grasping, but as mine? The question hangs in the immense silence of prehistory, a mystery we may never solve. For this first man there is no I. There is only a center of awareness, a point from which the world is perceived. He does not think about the past, nor does he contemplate the future. There is only the long, unbroken chord of the present moment. Memory exists, but it is not a story he tells himself. It is a feeling in the body. The scent of rain on hot earth is not a memory of the last storm. It is the storm itself, reawakened in the senses, a signal that water is coming. The sight of a lion's track in the dust is not a warning of a lion. It is the immediate presence of danger, a coiling in the gut, a sudden, sharp clarity in the eyes. As the sun climbs, the world changes. The light becomes heavy, the air thick with heat. The band moves with a slow, practiced economy, their bare feet knowing the texture of the earth, the places where the ground is hard, and the places where it is soft and yielding. They find a patch of earth that is different, disturbed. He sees a small succulent tuber, a familiar shape. The taste is not sweet or earthy. It is simply the sensation that quiets the ache in his belly. This is the rhythm of life. A need arises. The world provides a response. The need subsides. It is a simple, profound loop, unburdened by anxiety or desire for more. The day ends as it began. The light softens, stretching shadows into long, strange shapes. The air cools. The familiar sounds of the day fade, replaced by the chirps, clicks, and distant calls of the night. The band gathers in the shelter of a rock overhang. A fire kept alive from a distant lightning strike is coaxed from embers. It is not fire. It is the moving, dancing light that keeps the darkness at bay. It is the warmth that seeps into tired muscles. It is the center of their small temporary universe, a bubble of safety in a world that is vast, immediate, and utterly, magnificently unnamed. The moving light of the fire casts long dancing shadows against the rock overhang. In its glow, the world of raw sensation that filled the day begins to recede, and another, more intricate world comes into focus. It is the world of others. The air, which by day carried the scent of acacia and dust, now carries the smell of wood smoke, of roasting tubers, and the warm, familiar scent of the bodies huddled close. Our first man is not an island of awareness. He is a single point of light in a small constellation. He watches the firelight catch the eye of the old woman who sits opposite him. In that reflection, he sees not just light, but a flicker of the same watchfulness that resides within himself. This is where the human story truly begins to diverge, not in the upright stance or the clever hand, but in this deep, resonant awareness of other minds. Communication here is not a series of spoken words, but a constant, flowing river of signals. An older male, his face a map of seasons past, looks out into the darkness beyond the fire. His body is still, but it is a stillness that speaks. It is a taut, listening quiet that travels through the group like a ripple, and every other member becomes a little more still, their senses turned outward. No sound was made, yet a complex message was sent and received. Be alert. The night has ears. The primary language is the body. A young mother comforts her child, not with lullabies, but with the steady rhythm of her hand stroking his back. A slow, ancient reassurance that says, "You are safe. I am here." Two younger males sit side by side, carefully examining the point of a wooden spear. One touches a flaw in the wood, a subtle crack, and the other nods. Their shared gaze, their joint attention on this single point, is a conversation. It is a transfer of knowledge, an agreement on reality. This ability to look at what another is looking at and understand its significance is the bedrock upon which all teaching, all culture is built. Much of the day is spent in a quiet, moving meditation. Of grooming, he sits behind one of his kin, his fingers carefully sifting through the thick hair, picking out burrs, ticks, and bits of leaf. This is not merely an act of hygiene. It is the most profound social currency they possess. Each patient gentle touch is a sentence. It says, I am your ally. I care for your well-being. You can trust me. In a world without contracts or promises, this physical act of service is the bond that holds their fragile society together. Scientists refer to this as the social brain hypothesis, the idea that our minds grew so large not to make better tools, but to navigate the dizzyingly complex web of these social relationships. Keeping track of who is allied with whom, who is trustworthy, and who owes a debt of grooming required immense cognitive power. The sounds they make are as varied as the calls of birds and just as meaningful. There is no grammar, no syntax as we would know it. There are only utterances, each one a complete emotional and informational packet. A soft, breathy hoot is a call to gather, a sound of reassurance. A sharp, guttural click of the tongue is a warning, pointing to something that requires caution. A snake in the grass, an unstable rock. A long, low groan from someone who has eaten their fill is a signal of contentment and safety that relaxes the entire group. Linguists still wonder how this primal form of communication, often called a proto-language, made the leap to the complex symbolic system we use today. Did language begin with gestures, the hands painting ideas in the air? Or did it begin with these vocal calls slowly breaking down into smaller, reusable parts? It's a mystery buried deep in the past. Perhaps for this first man, the gesture and the sound were one and the same. When he points to the rising moon, a sliver of white in the ink-black sky, and lets out a soft sound of wonder, the sound is the pointing. It directs the attention of others, not to the word moon, but to the thing itself, to share in the direct experience. There is a subtle but constant negotiation of status, of position within the group. It happens not with arguments, but with the language of space. The dominant male sits closest to the choicest part of the roasted animal. Others keep a respectful distance, their posture slightly more compressed, but it is a fluid hierarchy. When a skilled flint knapper is at work, others draw close, their deference a recognition of his specific, valuable talent. Status is not a permanent title. It is a temporary state, earned through skill, wisdom, or strength, and communicated through the silent dance of proximity and posture. As the fire burns low and the embers glow like a collection of captured stars, the stream of signals slows. The bodies huddle closer, a jumble of limbs and shared warmth. The last communications of the day are the soft sounds of breathing, the occasional sigh. The social world dissolves back into the individual, but it leaves its mark. The feeling of safety is not just the absence of predators. It is the deep, cellular knowledge of the bodies nearby. He sleeps, not as a solitary creature, but as a part of a larger being, a single mind within a collective, held together by the ancient, unspoken whispers of the tribe. The new day arrives not with a sound, but with a gradual dilution of the dark. The world reassembles itself piece by piece. First, the gray shapes of the sleeping forms nearby, then the dark arch of the rock overhang, and finally, the vast, pale canvas of the morning sky. The fire is a mound of gray ash with a single pulsing heart of orange at its center. The ache returns to the belly, the ancient motor of all life, and with it, the silent, collective understanding that the day's great walk must begin. The band rises, a slow unfurling of limbs, and turns to face the landscape. Today, the journey is the lesson. Our young man walks near the old woman, the one whose face holds the memory of more seasons than anyone else. She is a living library, her knowledge not stored in symbols or sounds, but etched into her very being by a lifetime of walking, watching, and touching this land. Her movements are the teachings. She does not lecture or explain. She simply is, and to be near her is to learn. Her eyes, clouded with age, do not see less. They see differently. They are not looking for things, but for patterns, for breaks in the endless repetition of the savannah. She will stop, her body completely still, and her gaze will fix upon something he cannot yet perceive. He learns to follow her gaze, to attune his own senses to her focus. It is an exercise in shared attention, the same mental state that allowed them to understand the flaw in the spear, but now applied to the vast living world. She bends, her movements slow and deliberate, and her long fingers brush against a small dusty green leaf. She plucks it, rolls it between her thumb and forefinger, and raises it to her nose. He watches and he imitates, picking a leaf from the same plant. He feels its unique texture, a slight fuzziness on the underside. He smells its scent, a sharp, almost spicy aroma. A few paces away, another plant grows that looks nearly identical, its leaves the same shape and color. But the old woman passes it without a glance. Later, he will learn that this second plant, with its perfectly smooth leaves, brings a fire to the gut and a deep, unending sleep. The lesson is not spoken. It is written in the contrast between the rough and the smooth, the scented and the unscented. This is the birth of a science more ancient than any laboratory. It is a taxonomy built not on genetics, but on consequence. The world is divided into that which gives life and that which takes it, that which soothes a wound and that which causes it. He learns that a certain thick, milky sap can be used to bind a flint point to a shaft, but it must not touch the skin. He learns that the bark of one tree, when chewed, can take the edge off the pain of a bruised limb. He discovers that some berries must be bright, plump, and yielding to the touch, while others are only safe when they are hard and a specific shade of pale yellow. Scientists still puzzle over how the early human mind structured this immense database of knowledge. Without the written word, without formal systems of classification, how was this encyclopedia of survival organized and retrieved? Perhaps it was not like a list at all, but more like a web of stories and sensations. The memory of a certain plant might be tied inextricably to the memory of the light on that day, the sound of the wind, and the feeling of the old woman's reassuring presence. Knowledge was not an abstract fact, but a lived experience, a complete sensory event. The lesson continues, written in the soil itself. The old woman pauses and points a single gnarled finger at the ground. He looks and, at first, sees nothing but reddish dirt and pebbles. Then, following the line of her finger, he sees it, a faint, almost invisible scrape in the earth, and beside it, a single displaced stone. It is a sign so subtle that the wind could erase it in a moment, but it is a sign of purpose, of another creature's passage. She begins to dig with a sharpened stick, and soon unearths a nest of turtle eggs, a rare and precious prize. He learns to read these fleeting stories in the dust. A bent twig is not an accident. It is the recent passage of a creature of a certain height and weight. A tuft of brown fur caught on a thorn bush is the signature of a specific species. The world, which once seemed a chaos of sensory input, is now revealing itself to be a landscape of intricate meaning. The silence of the cicadas in the heat of the day is a warning. The direction of a spider's web can tell of the prevailing wind. The land is speaking, and he is finally beginning to understand its language. The sun sinks low, painting the sky in colors he has no names for. The band returns, their hands carrying roots, berries, eggs, and leaves. The food is brought to the fire, the center of their world, and it is shared. As he chews on a tough, fibrous root, he tastes more than just nourishment. He tastes the day's walk, the feel of the dusty leaf, the sight of the disturbed stone. He tastes the knowledge of the old woman, a wisdom passed down through a chain of countless ancestors who walked this same land. The world is no longer just a place of unnamed sensations. It is becoming a place of meaning, a home, its lessons written in dust and leaf, waiting for anyone patient and watchful enough to read them. The fire is the heart of the small sleeping world. It is more than burning wood. It is a presence. It breathes. In the stillness of the deep night, one can hear its soft crackling exhalations. the quiet hiss of sap turning to steam. For our first man, and for everyone who came before and after for 100,000 years, this circle of light was the only thing that held the great, pressing darkness at bay. We, who live in a world saturated with artificial light, cannot truly comprehend the quality of that prehistoric night. It was an absolute, an ocean of blackness, filled with the sounds of things that were not human. A presence so total, it could feel like a weight on the chest. The fire did not simply illuminate, it carved a space for humanity out of that primal fear. This fire is not a tool to be created and discarded. It is a treasure, a living inheritance. It is a tamed piece of the sun. Perhaps its ancestor was a bolt of lightning that shattered a great dry tree weeks ago, miles away. Perhaps an elder, in a moment of desperate courage, snatched a burning branch from the edge of a sweeping grass fire. No one here knows how to make a new one. The art of creating life from friction, of coaxing a spark from stone and wood, is a magic that lies far in the future. Their fire is a single, continuous entity, a life form that must be fed, protected, and carried with them on every journey. It is their most precious and most demanding member of the tribe. To keep it alive is a constant, shared duty. Before the band sleeps, the old woman carefully banks the embers, covering the glowing heart with a thick blanket of ash to slow its breathing through the night. When they travel, a piece of slow-burning fungus, or the smoldering core of a particular type of wood, is carefully wrapped in green leaves and cradled in a hollowed stone or a large shell. It must be shielded from the rain and the wind. Every few hours, the carrier must stop, unwrap it, and feed it a few dry fibers to keep its spirit alive. To let the fire die would be more than an inconvenience. It would be a catastrophe, a return to the cold, dark world of an earlier age. Around this fire, the very chemistry of survival is transformed. The tough, fibrous roots they gathered during the day, which would cost the jaw hours of painful chewing, and the gut a long, difficult battle to digest, are laid in the hot silver ash. Here, an external alchemy takes place. The fire does the work of the body. Its intense heat breaks down the complex starches into simpler, sweeter sugars and neutralizes the toxins that guard many plants. The food that emerges is soft, warm, and rich with readily available energy. This is the dawn of cooking, the single greatest dietary shift in human history. The energy saved from digestion was immense, and it was redirected elsewhere, to fuel longer journeys, to mend the body, and, most critically, to power the explosive growth of the complex, energy-hungry brain. We are, in a very real sense, the children of the flame. Archaeologists debate when this profound relationship truly began. They find scorched earth and charred bones in ancient caves, evidence that stretches back over 1,000,000 years. But the traces are faint, ambiguous. Was this a natural fire that swept through a cave? Or was it a true hearth, a home? When did our ancestors move from opportunistically using natural fires to systematically controlling and maintaining them? The line between the two is difficult to see in the deep ash of time, and the question of who first mastered fire and when remains a gentle, flickering mystery. The fire remade more than their food. It remade their time. The setting of the sun no longer meant the end of all productive activity. The hours of darkness, once lost to a state of fearful, huddled waiting, were now a different kind of day. This new time, firelight time, was calm, focused, and intensely social. It was in these hours that tools were mended, their flaws revealed in the dancing light. It was here that the social bonds, formed through grooming and shared foraging, were deepened through simple proximity. And it was here, in the quiet, that the first stories may have been born. Not in words, perhaps, but in gesture and reenactment. A hunter, his face lit by the orange glow, might mime the movements of the great deer he saw that day, his hands becoming the antlers, his body showing its graceful leap. The others watch, their shared attention focused on the shadow play. The fire provides the stage, The darkness provides the backdrop, and the human need to share experience provides the drama. It is in these circles of light, scattered across the ancient continents, that our inner worlds first began to touch. Staring into the shifting, hypnotic patterns of the flames, he sees not just burning wood, but a living, moving map of his own emerging thoughts. The sparks fly upward, disappearing into the great black sky, and for a moment, it seems the earth is speaking back to the stars. In the flickering theater of the firelight, amidst the soft sounds of breathing and the occasional sigh, a different kind of sound emerges. It is a sharp, rhythmic crack, the sound of stone striking stone. One of the men sits slightly apart, his entire being coiled into an act of intense concentration. Before him lie a few carefully chosen rocks. To a modern eye, they are unremarkable, but to him, they are a library of possibilities. This is not idle work. It is perhaps the most intellectually demanding task his world has to offer. It is the act of imposing a thought upon the raw, unyielding matter of the earth. The process did not begin here by the fire. It began hours before, during the long walk across the savannah. While his eyes scanned for tracks and his hands searched for edible plants, a part of his mind was engaged in another kind of foraging. He was searching for stone, not just any stone, but a specific kind, one with a fine glassy grain and a satisfying heft. He would pass by hundreds of rounded granite river cobbles, or soft crumbly sandstone. Then he would see it, a nodule of flint or chert, its dull outer cortex hiding a heart of pure workable silica. He would pick it up, feel its coolness, its density. He would tap it with another stone, listening for the clear, high-pitched ring that promised a clean, predictable fracture. This careful act of selection was the preface to the story he was about to write in stone. Now, in the orange glow of the fire, he holds the chosen core in one hand and a hard, dense hammerstone in the other. For a long moment, he does nothing. He simply looks at the rough, shapeless rock, turning it over and over. But in this stillness, a profound cognitive miracle is unfolding. He is not merely seeing the stone's current shape. In his mind's eye, he is seeing the shape that is hidden within it. He holds a mental template, a perfect, symmetrical, teardrop form. This ability to project an abstract idea onto a physical object is the essence of what it means to be human. A leopard sees a rock as a rock. He sees it as a potential tool, a future object that exists only in his imagination. Then the work begins. The first strike is a powerful, decisive blow. The hammerstone connects with the core at a precise angle, and with a sharp crack, a large flake flies off, taking the rough outer cortex with it. A clean, smooth surface is revealed. This is the first step in what archaeologists call the chaîne opératoire, the operational sequence. It is a chain of thought, where each action is not an end in itself, but a preparation for the next. He examines the fresh surface, the slight ripples in the stone that show how the force of the blow traveled through it. This surface is now a platform for his next strike. He adjusts his grip, turning the core. The next blow is gentler, more controlled. He is not trying to shatter the stone, but to peel it, to carefully remove long, thin flakes from its edges. It is a conversation with the material. Each strike is a question. Will you break here? The stone answers with the size and shape of the flake that is released. The air fills with the sharp, dry smell of fractured flint, a scent of dust and lightning. The rhythm of his work is hypnotic. Strike, turn, examine, strike, turn, examine. It is a dance of hand, eye, and mind, a feedback loop of intention and result. Slowly, the imagined form begins to emerge from the rough block. It is an Acheulean hand axe, the quintessential artifact of the early Stone Age. But as he nears the end, something strange happens. The tool is already functional. It has a sharp, durable edge, perfectly capable of butchering an animal or scraping a hide. Yet he continues. He switches from the hard hammerstone to a softer one, a piece of antler or bone. With this, he begins a final series of delicate, precise strikes along the edge, a technique called retouching. Tiny scalloped flakes fly off, refining the edge, making the entire object thinner, more elegant, and more perfectly symmetrical. Herein lies one of the deepest mysteries of our ancestors. Why this devotion to symmetry? Why make something so beautiful when something cruder would suffice? Some of these hand axes are found in ancient riverbeds by the hundreds, some far too large for any practical use, others made of beautiful, exotic stone, yet showing no signs of wear. They seem to be objects valued not for their utility, but for their form. Were they a kind of currency? A social signal? Where a male who could afford to spend time making such a perfect, useless object was demonstrating his fitness, his skill, his good genes? Or were they something else entirely? The first stirring of an aesthetic sense? The first art, created for the simple, profound satisfaction of seeing a beautiful, symmetrical form? He holds the finished object in his palm. In the firelight, its facets glint. It is cool to the touch, heavy, and it feels like an extension of his own body. This tool is more than just a sharp edge. The structured, sequential process of its creation, the planning, the foresight, the constant adjustment, was itself shaping his brain. Neuroscientists have suggested that the parts of the brain responsible for this kind of complex, hierarchical action are linked to the syntax of language. The hand, in learning to structure the stone, may have been teaching the brain how to structure a sentence. As he places the axe beside him, a thought made solid, he is unaware that the very act of its creation was helping to build the mind that would one day name the stars. The world is a rhythm, a great slow pulse of wet seasons and dry seasons. For as long as our first man can remember, the pulse has been steady. The rains come, the grass grows green and tall, the great herds of wildebeest and antelope arrive, and the land is full of life. Then the rains cease. The grass turns to gold, and then to dust, and the herds move on, following the promise of water that always lies to the north. His people have always lived within this rhythm, moving with it in a small circumscribed dance. But now the rhythm is breaking. The dry season has been too long. The sun feels hotter, more relentless. The familiar waterhole, once a wide, muddy pool, is now just a cracked, ceramic hard depression in the earth. The animals whose movements they know as well as their own have not returned. The stories written in the dust, which once spoke of abundance, now speak only of absence and thirst. There is a tension in the tribe, a quiet anxiety that hangs in the hot, still air. The land that has been their cradle is beginning to feel like a cage. The decision to move is never spoken. It is a tide that rises slowly within the group. It begins with the hunters, who must walk farther each day, their shoulders stooped with fatigue on their return. It is read in the eyes of the old woman, who looks to the northern horizon with a deep, furrowed gaze. It is felt in the cries of the children, their bellies not quite as full as they once were. One morning, the band simply wakes, and without a word, turns their back on the familiar rock overhang, on the valley that has been their only world, and they begin to walk. They walk towards the horizon, towards the place the herds have gone. They carry nothing that cannot be remade. Their shelters are the sky and the occasional cave. Their larders are the landscape through which they pass. Their only true possession, the thread of continuity in their lives, is the fire. A designated keeper cradles a smoldering piece of wood wrapped in hides and leaves, a precious, living coal that represents their past and their future. To leave the fire behind would be to leave themselves. This is the beginning of the great expansion, the slow, inexorable trickle of humanity out of its African birthplace that would eventually lead to the settlement of every corner of the planet. But for this small band, it is not an epic journey. There is no destination, no map, no sense of a grander purpose. It is simply an extension of the daily search for food, a slight shift in their nomadic range. For a generation, they might only move 30 or 40 miles, a distance a modern car could cover in half an hour. But over 1,000 years, that slow generational drift becomes an unstoppable current. What was the engine of this incredible expansion? Scientists debate the exact causes. Climate models of the ancient world show a restless planet, with ice sheets locking up the world's water and then retreating, causing deserts in Africa to bloom and then expand again. Perhaps they were pushed, driven out by environmental collapse, forced to seek refuge in lands that were less harsh. Or perhaps they were pulled, following the vast herds of migratory animals into new territories, a world of fresh resources with no other humans to compete with. But there may have been another force at work, something less tangible than climate or resources, a change within the human mind itself. He stands on a rocky outcrop, looking out over a valley he has never seen before. The air smells different here. The trees are a darker shade of green. In the distance, a line of hills is shaped differently than any he knows. He feels a stirring within him. It is not fear of the unknown, but a deep, resonant curiosity. It is the simple, powerful, and profoundly human question. What is over there? This ache for the horizon, this pull of the unseen, may be the true spark that lit the great migrations. Earlier hominins had left Africa, but our species, Homo sapiens, did it with a unique and relentless fervor. The mystery remains. Was it a new technology, like better tools or tailored clothing, that allowed us to adapt to new climates? Was it a change in social structure that created larger, more resilient groups? Or was it a cognitive leap, a new way of thinking that allowed for long-term planning and a more profound curiosity about the world? The archaeological and genetic breadcrumbs give us a map of where and when, but the deep why is still whispered on the ancient winds. As dusk falls, the band finds a new place to rest, a small alcove in a sandstone cliff. The familiar constellations begin to appear in the unfamiliar sky. The keeper of the flame carefully unwraps the smoldering ember, feeds it a handful of dry grass and twigs, and breathes it back to life. As the flames grow, they cast their familiar dancing light on the strange new rock. In moments, the alien landscape is made familiar. They have created a home. He sits in the circle of light, the heart of their portable world, and looks out into the new darkness. It is vast and unknown, but tonight it feels less like a threat and more like a promise. The new land continues to unspool before them, a tapestry of unfamiliar sights and sounds. The band learns the habits of different animals, the properties of new plants. The world is a constant process of discovery, a slow translation of the unknown into the familiar. Each day, the horizon that once seemed so distant becomes their campsite, and a new, more distant horizon is born. It is on one of these exploratory walks, following a game trail along the banks of a winding, tree-lined river, that our protagonist finds a sign that stops him in his tracks. It is a footprint in the soft mud of the riverbank. At a glance, it is familiar, the mark of a bipedal walker, a human. But as he crouches to look closer, a feeling of deep strangeness settles over him. The print is broader than any he has ever seen, the heel more pronounced, the arch of the foot almost flat. The toes are shorter, more robust. This was made by someone who walked like his people, but was not of his people. A moment later, a new scent reaches him on the breeze, carried from further up the valley. It is the smell of wood smoke, but it is subtly different, perhaps from a type of wood they have not yet burned. A deep, instinctual caution takes hold. His small hunting party, 2 others beside him, freezes. They are not alone. They abandon the riverbank, moving like shadows into the thicker woods that line the valley slope. Every sense is heightened. The snap of a twig underfoot sounds as loud as a falling tree. They move slowly, upwind towards the source of the smoke. After a time, through a screen of leaves, they see it. A small clearing, and in its center, a fire. Around the fire is a family group, perhaps 5 or 6 individuals. His mind so adept at recognizing patterns, at categorizing the world, struggles with what it sees. They are people, but they are not. Their bodies are thicker, more powerful. The men have deep, barrel-like chests, and their arms and legs are heavy with muscle. Their skulls are shaped differently, longer, lower, with a distinct swelling at the back. And over their eyes, a strong curved ridge of bone juts forward, shading their gaze. Their faces are dominated by large, projecting noses. One of the women turns, and in the dappled sunlight, he sees the glint of a reddish tint in her hair. They move with a kind of deliberate, grounded force, their bodies perfectly engineered for a life of strength and endurance in a colder world. The tools lying near their fire are also different. They are not the slender blade-like flakes he is used to seeing. They are broader, heavier looking, expertly crafted in a style that is entirely alien to him. For a long, breathless time, he and his companions simply watch. They are witnessing something that has not happened for perhaps 50,000 years since their common ancestors walked the African plains. Two distinct streams of humanity, long separated by time and geography, have converged in this quiet, forgotten valley. These are the Neanderthals, a parallel humanity that has thrived in the harsh landscapes of Ice Age Europe and Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. Then it happens. A woman from the other group, tending to a skin stretched on the ground, looks up. Her eyes, deep set beneath that heavy brow, scan the forest. For a heart-stopping moment, her gaze locks directly onto his. In that instant, the vast gulf of difference between them, the shape of the skull, the build of the body, the style of the tools, collapses into a single point of recognition. He does not see a monster or an animal. He sees a mind. He sees awareness, intelligence, caution, and perhaps a flicker of the same deep curiosity that holds him motionless. The world, which he thought he was beginning to understand, has just fractured into a new and profound complexity. The category of human is not singular. There are others. Geneticists today can read the echoes of these encounters in our very DNA. The genomes of modern humans of non-African descent contain a small but significant percentage of Neanderthal DNA. This is the undeniable proof that meetings like this did not always end in fear or violence. They must have at times led to curiosity, to acceptance, even to family. We carry the ghosts of these other people within us. They are a part of our story. Yet, as he watches them, a great and haunting question hangs in the air, a question that science still struggles to answer. Why is it his people who will go on to inherit the planet, while these powerful, intelligent, and highly adapted people will vanish? Looking at them now in their element, it would be impossible to guess at their fate. Was it a subtle vulnerability to a new disease his own people carried? Was it a dietary inflexibility in the face of a rapidly changing climate? Or were there smaller, more scattered populations simply absorbed by the larger waves of modern humans pouring out of Africa? Their ultimate disappearance is a silent, poignant reminder that the path of evolution is not always a simple march of progress. The moment stretches, a silent, fragile truce held in a shared gaze. There is no sound, no gesture of aggression from either side. Finally, with an almost imperceptible nod to his companions, he begins to back away, melting into the shadows of the forest. The woman watches them go, her expression unreadable. She does not call out an alarm. The encounter ends. That night, beside the familiar comfort of his own fire, the world feels immeasurably larger. The faces of his own tribe, once the only template for humanity he knew, now seem more precious, more specific. The distant horizon he has been chasing has delivered a revelation far more profound than a new mountain range or a different type of prey. It has shown him a mirror, and in it, he has seen a different version of himself. The Valley of the Other People now exists as a permanent landmark in his mind, a place that redefines the very meaning of us. The memory of the other people lingers, a new and permanent feature in the landscape of the mind. But the world of thought is a luxury. and the world of the body is a constant, pressing reality. The gnawing ache of hunger is a more immediate concern than the existence of another humanity. For days, the band has subsisted on roots and the occasional small creature, but it is not enough. The children are listless, the elders quiet. Then the scouts return, their eyes bright with a silent, urgent message. They have found the tracks of a great prize, a herd of giant elk, their immense antlers like forests carried on their heads. The unspoken consensus ripples through the camp. The time for gathering is over. The time for the great hunt has come. The hunt does not begin with a chase, but with a quiet ritual in the firelight. The hunters gather, their movements deliberate and focused. Our protagonist selects his best spear, its wooden shaft seasoned and straight. He runs his thumb along the flint point, the one he so carefully crafted what seems like a lifetime ago. It is still sharp, but he knows it must be perfect. Using a piece of rough sandstone, he begins to work the edge, a patient, repetitive scraping sound that is the only percussion in the quiet camp. This is not just the sharpening of a tool, it is the sharpening of the mind, a paring away of all distraction until only a single point of purpose remains. Around him, other hunters do the same, testing the sinew bindings, feeling the balance of their weapons. They are not speaking, but they are in deep communion. At dawn, they move out. They are a small group, perhaps 5 of the strongest and quickest. They move not with the slow, meandering pace of foraging, but with a silent, purposeful stride. The leader, a man whose age is marked not in years, but in the scars on his arms and the deep knowledge in his eyes, is reading the earth. He points to a patch of grass, still dewy but trampled. He crumbles a piece of dried mud from the edge of a track between his fingers. It is still cool. The elk are close, and they are moving slowly. His senses are in conversation with the land, and every hunter behind him is listening. They find the herd in a wide, grassy basin. 100 or more animals, a moving sea of brown fur and bone. To rush them would be suicide. Here the true hunt begins, and it is a hunt of the mind. The leader does not speak a word, but he orchestrates a complex plan. A glance and a flick of the wrist sends 2 hunters on a long looping path to the far side of the basin, a journey that will take an hour. A subtle hand signal directs another to a high rocky outcrop that overlooks the herd. Our protagonist's role is to wait, to be a part of the trap that has not yet been set. This is the pact. It is a plan held in the collective consciousness of the group, a shared intention that exists without language. It requires a profound trust, a kind of group telepathy where each man knows his part and trusts that the others will know theirs. As they wait, motionless behind a screen of thorny bushes, one can only wonder at the sheer audacity of this act. Why target such immense and powerful creatures? Why not focus on the smaller, less dangerous game that is far more plentiful? Archaeologists have long debated the role of megafauna in the prehistoric diet. Were these great hunts a regular occurrence, the very foundation of their survival? Or were they rare, high-stakes events, undertaken more for the social prestige they conferred than for the calories they provided? The truth likely lies somewhere in between, a complex calculation of risk, need, and reward that we can now only guess at. An hour passes. The sun climbs higher. Then, a signal. Not a sound, but a movement. On the far ridge, a flicker of motion from the hunter stationed there. The 2 flankers have reached their positions. The trap is set. The leader gives a low bird call, a sound that is part of the natural chorus of the plains. On cue, the flankers break from their cover, shouting and waving their arms. At the same time, the hunter on the ridge rolls a large boulder down the rocky slope. The sound echoes through the basin. Panic ripples through the herd. But it is a controlled, directed panic. The hunters are not trying to kill. They are herding. They are using their deep, intuitive knowledge of animal psychology, steering the terrified animals away from the open plains and towards a narrow bottleneck in the terrain, a place where the basin drains into a steep-sided gully. The great animals pour into the gully, their movements hampered by the close quarters. Now, and only now, do our protagonist and the leader make their move. They are not attacking the strongest bulls at the front, but an older, slower female near the back, one already showing signs of exhaustion. Their movements are precise, economical, and incredibly brave. It is over in moments. One life is taken to sustain many. There is no roar of victory. A quiet, almost solemn mood settles over the hunters as they stand before the fallen animal. It is a moment of respect, of acknowledging the great spirit that has departed so that they might live. The true work, the work of butchering this mountain of meat and hide, is just beginning. But as they draw their stone knives, a powerful, unspoken bond flows between them. They have faced the great beast, and through their shared mind, their silent pact, they have prevailed. It is this cooperation, this ability to weave individual minds into a single purposeful thread, that is their greatest tool and their most profound secret. The fire roars, a celebration of life. For the first time in many weeks, every belly is full. The rich, smoky taste of roasted meat, a reward from the great hunt, has washed away the lingering anxieties of scarcity. A deep, collective contentment settles over the band. The children, usually asleep by now, chase each other's shadows in the expansive firelight, their soft laughter rising into the night air. In these rare moments of abundance and security, the relentless focus on survival can soften, allowing the mind to wander into other less immediate landscapes. As the energy of the feast subsides, our protagonist lies back on a patch of still warm earth, his head resting on a smooth stone. He looks past the twisting column of smoke and sparks, up into the great, dark ocean of the sky. He has looked at it every night of his life, but tonight, with a full belly and a quiet mind, he truly sees it. We who live under a sky veiled by the glow of our own creations have forgotten what a true night looks like. His sky is not black, it is a riot of light. The great river of the Milky Way is not a faint, milky smudge, but a brilliant, textured band of cloud and dust and light, so bright that it casts its own soft, ghostly shadows on the land. The darkness is not empty. It is crowded with a dizzying multitude of stars, a field of diamonds scattered on black velvet. In this beautiful, overwhelming chaos, his mind instinctively begins to do what it has been shaped to do for 1,000,000 years. It searches for patterns. It is the same cognitive impulse that allows him to see the shape of a hand axe in a rough cobble of flint, the same skill that lets him read the story of a herd's passage in a confusion of trampled grass. The mind is a pattern-seeking machine, and this is the greatest pattern of all. He sees a straight line of 3 bright stars, a familiar landmark in the celestial wilderness. Not far from it, he sees a small, tight cluster of fainter lights, like a swarm of glowing insects. He does not have names for them, no Orion, no Pleiades, but he recognizes them. They are familiar faces in the vast, silent crowd. He begins to connect the dots, projecting the world he knows onto the canvas above. A graceful arc of stars becomes the sweeping horns of a great buffalo. A sprawling, less defined shape becomes a lion, forever stalking the 3 stars that are the elk. This is the birth of the constellations, the first act of making the terrifyingly vast and inhuman cosmos into something familiar, something that reflects the earthbound realities of life. It is the beginning of mythology, the first attempt to weave a human story into the fabric of the universe. And the patterns are not static. He has noticed over a lifetime of observation that the entire sky moves. It wheels in a great, slow circle around a single unmoving point of light in the north. He has also seen how the patterns change with the seasons. The appearance of that particular arc of stars on the eastern horizon at dusk is a reliable sign that the rainy season is near. The rising of the bright 3-star line just before the sun is the signal that the great herds will soon begin their journey south. The sky is more than a beautiful spectacle. It is a map, a compass, and a calendar. It is the land's greater, more predictable twin. The moon is an even more intimate companion. He has watched its steady, reliable rhythm his entire life. He has seen it born as a fragile silver crescent, swell to a magnificent, luminous disk that bathes the world in a cool white light and then waste away into darkness before its inevitable rebirth. This cycle, this slow, silent breath of the moon, is the first and most fundamental measure of time beyond the day. It is a rhythm that speaks to the deepest parts of human biology, a clock that governs the tides of the sea and the tides within the body. Archaeologists have found ancient bones, tens of thousands of years old, etched with sequences of notches and lines. Some believe these may be the first calendars, primitive attempts to track the phases of the moon. In the painted caves of Europe, clusters of dots have been found that seem to correspond to constellations. It is a tantalizing but unproven idea. When did our ancestors' gaze shift from one of simple awe to one of systematic observation? The mystery remains, hidden in the ambiguity of a scratch on a bone. Suddenly, a streak of brilliant white light tears across the sky, silent and impossibly fast. A star has fallen from its place. He has seen this before, but it is always a shock, a moment that stops the heart. He does not know it is a speck of cosmic dust burning in the atmosphere. To him, it is a sign, a message from the vast, powerful world above. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated awe, a feeling that is the seed of both science and religion. It is the feeling of being small in the face of an immense and profound mystery. The fire is now just a bed of glowing embers. The camp is silent, asleep. But he remains awake, a solitary consciousness looking up into the infinite. The universe is speaking in a language of light and time, and he is just beginning to learn its grammar. The sky, which had been a map of silent, distant fires, has vanished. For 2 days, a relentless cold rain has fallen, turning the earth to mud and driving the animals to shelter. The band's usual overhang is no longer enough. The wind drives the water in, soaking their sleeping furs and threatening the precious sputtering fire. Driven by the need for true shelter, they do something they rarely do. They venture deep into one of the limestone caves that honeycomb the surrounding hills. They move past the familiar mouth, into the twilight zone where the sun's reach fades, and then, deeper still, into a world of absolute, profound blackness. The only light is a single torch, a thick branch wrapped in animal fat, its flame casting a small nervous bubble of orange in the immense, silent dark. The air here is different. It is cold still and heavy with the smell of wet stone and a deep mineral scent of the earth's bones. The only sound is the echo of their own footsteps and the slow, patient drip, drip, drip of water. A sound that has been measuring the passage of time in this place for longer than humanity has existed. It feels like they have stepped out of the world of the living and into a silent, secret underworld. Finding a dry, elevated chamber, they rebuild their fire, its light pushing back the oppressive darkness and painting their familiar faces in strange, dancing shadows. Our protagonist, exploring the edges of their new sanctuary, places his hand against the cave wall to steady himself on the uneven ground. The stone is cool and slightly damp. When he pulls his hand away, he sees that it is stained a deep, rusty red. He looks at the wall. A natural vein of soft, earthy mineral, red ochre, runs through the limestone. He looks at his own palm, now the color of a fresh kill, the color of life itself. He presses his hand to the wall again, this time with purpose. A faint, ghostly print remains. It is a simple mark, but in that moment, the universe shifts on its axis. It is a trace of his existence, a declaration in the deep silence. I am here. A new kind of curiosity, an impulse he has never felt before, takes hold of him. He scrapes a handful of the soft, red earth from the wall. Using 2 stones as a mortar and pestle, he grinds it into a fine, brilliant powder. He spits into the hollow of his palm, mixing the powder into a thick, wet paste. The paint is ready. He turns back to a clean, smooth stretch of the cave wall. He places his left hand flat against the stone, fingers spread wide. Taking a hollow reed from the cave floor, he loads it with the liquid pigment, puts it to his lips, and blows. A fine red mist sprays around his hand. He repeats this again and again, his breath giving flight to the color. Then he pulls his hand away. What is left on the wall is stunning in its simplicity and its power. It is not a hand. It is the idea of a hand. A perfect silhouette, a negative image, surrounded by a halo of red dust. This is the great leap, the moment the mind learns to separate an object from its representation. The hand on his arm is real, flesh and bone. The hand on the wall is a symbol, a thought made visible. It is the birth of art. His eyes, now accustomed to the strange light, begin to see other things in the cave. The flickering, unreliable light of the torch is a kind of magic. It animates the world, making the stone itself seem to move. He sees a natural bulge in the rock that looks, for all the world, like the powerful shaggy shoulder of a bison. A long descending crack in the stone mimics the graceful curve of a wild horse's back. He is not looking at a blank canvas. The cave itself is offering him images. Taking a piece of burnt wood from the fire, he reaches up and makes a mark with the charcoal. He traces the curve of the crack, extending it into a long flowing tail. He draws a short, delicate head and 4 legs tucked underneath, as if in mid-gallop. He is not creating the horse so much as releasing it from the stone. He is collaborating with the shadows, with the shape of the rock, with the dancing light. Soon the walls of the chamber are filled with the silent, moving ghosts of the animals they know so well. The great elk from the hunt, the woolly rhinoceros, the lion. In the unsteady breathing light of the fire, the creatures seem to move, their painted muscles rippling, their legs galloping across the stone in an endless silent stampede. Why here? Why in this cold, dark, secret place, so far from the light of the sun? This question has haunted us for as long as we have known of these painted caves. Was this hunting magic an attempt to capture the spirit of an animal to ensure a successful hunt? Were these the visions of a shaman, a sacred portal to another world? Or was this a place of teaching, where the lore of the tribe was passed down through stories painted on the walls? The artists left no explanation, only the breathtaking, silent art itself. Their purpose remains the deepest and most beautiful of all prehistoric mysteries. He steps back, holding the torch aloft. He is no longer in a simple cave. He is in the center of his own mind, its contents poured out onto the stone around him. He has taken his memories, his fears, his reverence for the great animals, and given them a permanent home in the dark. In the deepest heart of the earth, humanity has found its voice, and it speaks not in words, but in shadow and line. They emerge from the mouth of the cave as if from a long dream. The storm has passed, and the world is washed clean. The air smells of wet earth and fresh green life. Sunlight, brilliant and warm, feels like a forgotten sensation on their skin. But it is not just the weather that has changed. The time spent in the deep, silent darkness, in the presence of the great painted animals that now sleep on the stone walls, has altered something within them. The world they have returned to looks the same, but it feels different. It feels more alive. Our protagonist looks at the ancient, gnarled tree that stands sentinel by the cave's entrance. He has seen it 1,000 times, but before, it was simply a thing. A source of wood, a patch of shade, a landmark. Now his eyes, trained by the act of finding a horse's back in a crack of stone, see it differently. He sees the thick, twisted roots, gripping the earth like a clawed foot. He sees the heavy spreading branches as powerful arms, and the deep, furrowed bark as a kind of ancient, wrinkled skin. The gentle rustle of its leaves in the breeze is no longer just a sound. It is a whisper, a slow, patient exhalation. He feels its presence, its immense, silent, rooted life. The tree is not a what, it is a who. This new way of seeing ripples outward, touching everything. The river they must cross is no longer just an obstacle of moving water. It has a personality, a will. He remembers days when its current was slow and gentle, allowing for an easy crossing, and other days when it was a raging, brown torrent, its voice a deep roar that warned them to stay away. It has moods, it has intention. The great solitary boulder that sits on the crest of the hill is not a geological accident. It is an entity, deep in a state of slow, silent contemplation. To pass it by is to be in the presence of a sleeping elder. This perception that the world is populated not by objects, but by persons, is the dawning of what we now call animism. It was not a naive superstition. It was the most logical and sophisticated theory of the world available. The human brain evolved to understand the world in terms of agency, of intention. In a landscape where a sudden movement in the grass was more likely to be a hidden predator than the wind, the instinct to assume a who was behind every event was a powerful survival mechanism. Cognitive scientists sometimes refer to this as a hyperactive agency detection device, a built-in tendency to find a mind behind the curtain of reality. It was far safer to mistake the wind for a spirit than to mistake a lion for the wind. This worldview transformed survival from a mechanical act into a social one. The world became a vast and complex society, and humans were just one of its many members. The animals they hunted were not mere resources, they were other nations, other peoples. A successful hunt was not a simple victory of might, but a complex negotiation. It depended on the hunter's skill, but also on the animal's willingness to give itself. Therefore, one must show respect. After the great elk was taken, the lead hunter had returned to the spot the next day and left a perfect, unused flint blade, a gift of thanks to the spirit of the elk people. It was a matter of cosmic etiquette. This new awareness creates a distinction in the tribe. There are those who are more sensitive to this world behind the world. The man who first painted the cave wall finds that his dreams are more vivid, that he can see the faces in the fire more clearly than others. Perhaps through the rhythmic drumming and chanting that sometimes fills the firelit nights, he can enter a state of trance, a journey into the spirit world to ask for healing, or to find the location of the herds. He is becoming a shaman, a bridge between the seen and the unseen, a diplomat to the spirit world. The ultimate origin of this profound shift in consciousness is perhaps the greatest mystery of our species. Was it born here, in the sensory deprivation of the deep caves, where the mind, starved of external light, was forced to create its own? Did it arise from the nightly mystery of dreams, where everyone travels to a world that feels utterly real but is unbound by physical laws? Or did it simply grow slowly and organically from the need to explain the unexplainable? The sudden sickness, the bolt of lightning from a clear sky, the final, irreversible stillness of death. As night returns, our protagonist sits by the fire, looking not up at the stars, but out into the surrounding darkness. The world is no longer just a physical space to be navigated. It is a living, breathing community. The wind is a conversation. The distant cry of an owl is not just a sound, it is a statement. The silent, brooding presence of the mountain on the horizon is a powerful being whose name they do not know. He does not feel like a master of this world. He feels like a citizen. He is a part of a vast, intricate, and sacred society of beings, both visible and invisible, and he must learn to walk among them with respect. The rhythm of the camp is broken. The small familiar sounds that form the backdrop of daily life, the cracking of nuts, the scraping of a hide, the soft murmur of voices, are absent. A quiet has fallen, a heavy silence that is different from the stillness of sleep. The old woman, the keeper of the leaf knowledge, the one whose hands could read the stories in the roots, has passed. Her breath, a constant, gentle presence for as long as anyone can remember, has faded, leaving a profound and hollow emptiness in the air. Death is not new. They have seen it in the animal world, and they have lost members of their own small band before. To a predator, to a fall, to a sickness that came like a cold mist in the night. In the past, the response was a simple, pragmatic one. The body its life force departed would be left behind for the great cycle of nature to reclaim. The band would move on, the sharp edge of grief slowly worn down by the constant, pressing need to find the next meal, the next shelter. But this time is different. Their world has changed. It is no longer a world of things, but a world of spirits. The tree has a presence, the river has a voice, and the old woman, they now understand, was more than just her body. She was a spirit, a consciousness, a unique light in the constellation of the tribe. And while that light may have left its vessel, the thought of leaving that vessel to the hyenas and the vultures now feels like a profound violation, a final, terrible act of disrespect. Her spirit is on a journey to the world behind the world, and they feel a new unspoken obligation to the house it has left behind. A new impulse arises, born from this new way of seeing. It is the need to do something, to make a gesture that is equal to the magnitude of the event. It is the same impulse that led to the handprint on the cave wall. The need to give an inner feeling an outer form. The decision is not spoken, but it is shared. They will not leave her. They choose a place in the shade of the great ancient tree they have come to see as a guardian. With sharpened digging sticks and the broad, strong shoulder blades of a giant elk, they begin to break the earth. The work is slow and hard. The sun beats down, and sweat traces paths through the dust on their skin. This is not a task of convenience. It is a labor of love, a communal effort fueled by loss. Each scoop of earth is a testament to the weight of her life, to the depth of their grief. They are digging a bed, a final resting place. They are making the first grave. When the shallow hollow is deep enough, they stop. The act that follows is one of infinite tenderness. They lift her frail body, not as a burden, but as a treasure. They do not cast her in, but lay her down gently. They curl her body, drawing her knees up to her chest, and place her on her side, as if she were merely asleep. It is a position of rest, but it is also the position of a baby in the womb. It is an act of hope, a wish for rebirth into the spirit world. Then something new happens, something that marks a profound shift in the human story. One by one, they bring gifts. A younger woman, whose child the elder had often cradled, places a string of river snail shells, polished by long hours of work, around her neck. The lid hunter, his face carved with a grief he cannot speak, places a perfect hand axe in her still hand. Not a worn-out tool, but a new one, a beautiful one, its edges sharp and unused. It is his greatest creation, his offering for her journey. Our protagonist, his mind still filled with the red dust of the underworld, brings a lump of ochre. He crushes it and lets the vibrant, life-colored powder rain down over her body, a final blanket of symbolic blood, a prayer for continued vitality in the world beyond. Archaeologists have found echoes of this moment across the ancient world. At a site called Shanidar Cave in modern Iraq, one of their Neanderthal cousins was laid to rest, and the soil around his body was filled with the pollen of ancient flowers. Was he buried on a bed of blossoms? The idea is debated, but the question it inspires is what matters. What emotion prompted these acts? Was it simply a way to dispose of the dead? Or was it something more? Was it grief, love, the first glimmerings of a belief that the spirit's journey required provisions? We see the bones and the tools, but the first tears, the first prayers for the dead, are lost to the silence. They gently push the excavated earth back into the grave, covering her body, returning her to the great, slow embrace of the land. They place a large, flat river stone over the mound, a marker, so they will not forget where she rests. That night, the fire seems smaller, the darkness larger. The empty space she has left in their circle is a palpable presence. But as he looks out at the simple mound of earth, a quiet certainty settles in him. The old woman is not gone. Her spirit is traveling, and her body is at rest. But her memory, anchored to this place by the weight of their actions, by the power of their ritual, has become a permanent landmark in their world. They have found a way to hold on to their dead. They have invented remembrance. The place of the first grave has become sacred, a fixed point of memory in their nomadic world. But memory is a heavy stone to carry, and the land around it feels haunted by the ghost of their grief. The herds have moved on, and the silent gravitational pull of the horizon, the deep instinct to see what lies beyond the next hill, reasserts itself. The band turns their back on the grave, carrying the old woman now, not in their arms, but in their minds. Their journey this time takes them towards a different air, one that is heavy with moisture and the sharp, tangy scent of salt. After many weeks of walking through low, marshy lands, they arrive at the edge of their world. It is a barrier more absolute than any mountain range, more daunting than any desert. Before them lies a vast, shifting, living surface of water. Whether it is a river so wide its other bank is a smudge of green in the distance, or the great, endless ocean itself, the effect is the same. It is an impassable line. The solid, reliable earth, the only thing they have ever known, simply stops, and a new, alien element begins. It breathes, its surface rising and falling in a slow, deep rhythm. It speaks, a constant, soft roar of moving water. Their knowledge of the land, their ability to read tracks and find routes is useless here. They make their camp at this strange new edge, a frontier between the known and the unknowable. For days, they simply watch. They see great trunks of trees, swept from some forest far upriver, drift silently past on the current. They watch the seabirds, masters of this liquid world, dive and soar and rest on its surface. The water is an end, a barrier, but it is also a place of constant movement, a great flowing road to somewhere else, but it is not a road they can walk. The first step into this new world is not one of genius, but of accident. A child playing at the water's edge climbs onto a large sun-bleached log that has washed ashore. A wave, larger than the rest, lifts the log and pulls it into the deeper water. A moment of shared panic grips the band, but the child does not sink. He shrieks, but it is a sound of surprise, not terror. He is floating. The log, a simple piece of dead wood, is holding him aloft, carrying him on the water's gentle swell. A few of the men wade out and push the log back to shore. The child is safe, but the world has been irrevocably changed. An idea has been born, as electrifying as the first controlled flame. Wood can defy water. The mind of our protagonist, the mind that saw an axe in a stone and a horse on a cave wall, now looks at the driftwood scattered along the shore in a new light. He sees not just logs, but possibilities. He pushes a single, large log into the water. It floats, but when he tries to put his weight on it, it rolls, throwing him into the cold, churning water. It is unstable, untrustworthy. But what if it was not alone? He sees two logs, lying side by side on the sand. An image forms in his mind. The two logs join together, a surface wider and more stable. It is a new kind of problem, requiring a new kind of making. He and another hunter drag two logs of similar size together at the water's edge. Using the tough, pliable vines they have always used for binding spear points and building shelters, they begin to lash the logs together. It is clumsy, frustrating work. They have no experience of this. Their knots, designed for the static pull of a spear binding, slip and loosen in the dynamic, shifting environment of the water. But they learn. They adapt. After a full day of labor, they have created a crude, awkward platform. It is not beautiful like the hand axe, nor is it evocative like the paintings. It is a purely functional object, born of a desperate new idea. They have made a raft. The first voyage is a journey of only a few feet, but it is a greater leap than any migration they have made on land. Two of the younger men, their hearts caught between fear and exhilaration, push the raft into the water and clamber aboard. They feel the solid world fall away. The raft shifts and groans under their weight. It is a living, unpredictable thing. Using their hands as paddles, they push themselves away from the shore. They are adrift. They are sailors. For the first time, humans are moving with intention upon the surface of the water. This crude assembly of wood and vine is the ancestor of every boat that will ever sail. The minds that conceived it are the minds that will one day cross oceans. We know that by 65,000 years ago, modern humans had reached Australia, a continent that was never connected by land to Asia. They must have made the journey on water. What did their vessels look like? Were they simple rafts like this one, carrying families on a perilous accidental drift? Or were they something more sophisticated? The ancient boats have all rotted away, leaving only the mystery of their ghost ships and the irrefutable proof of their success: human footprints on a once empty continent. The barrier has become a road. The Great Water is no longer just an edge. It is a new territory, a liquid savanna offering up its own resources. They learn to fish from the raft, to reach rocky outcrops teeming with birds. As evening falls, they sit by their fire, and the setting sun makes a glittering path across the water. The other side is still far away, a place of myth and dream. But it is no longer impossible. A new ache has joined the ache for the horizon, the ache for the other shore. The camp is nestled at the boundary of two worlds. Behind them is the solid, familiar earth of the forest. Before them is the endless rhythmic sigh of the great water. This new sound has become the backdrop to their lives, a constant, gentle percussion that measures out the days and nights. They have grown used to it, its soft roar a kind of lullaby. The tribe is gathered around the fire, the day's explorations on their crude raft complete. A feeling of quiet accomplishment hangs in the air, a confidence born from confronting a great barrier and turning it into a path. In the comfortable silence, a young boy idly taps two smooth, flat river stones together. At first, the sound is random, a sharp click-clack that mimics the sound of tool-making. But then a pattern begins to emerge. Influenced, perhaps, by the steady rhythm of the waves on the shore, his tapping becomes regular. A simple, repeated pulse. Tap, 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 tap. It is a sound that has a shape, a predictable return. Another person, a young woman, looks up and smiles. She begins to clap her hands in time with the stones, her softer, fleshy sound weaving into the sharp percussion. Soon another joins in, slapping his hands against his thighs. A simple shared pulse has been born in the circle of firelight, and a strange magic begins to work upon them. As they fall into the shared rhythm, the boundaries between them start to dissolve. It is a neurological phenomenon as much as a social one. Their breathing begins to synchronize. Their heart rates couple to the beat. They are no longer a collection of separate individuals. For these few moments, they are a single rhythmic organism, their individual minds and bodies locked together in a shared, moving present. This is the primal power of rhythm, the most fundamental and potent social glue our species has ever discovered. Into this percussive landscape, another sound enters. It is the human voice. An older man, his eyes closed, begins to chant on a single low note, a deep hum that is more felt than heard. A woman's voice joins his, a fifth above, a clear, haunting harmony that hangs in the air. There are no words. Language is too specific, too small for the feelings of this moment. The awe of the great water, the memory of the great hunt, the lingering sadness for the ones they have lost. This is a more ancient form of communication, a language of pure emotion, of shared inner states made audible. Some theorists believe this is the very origin of our most complex abilities, a musa-language, from which both music and speech later diverged. Our protagonist has been watching, listening, feeling the rhythm in his own chest. He is holding a piece of bone left over from a great bird, A vulture, perhaps, whose wingspan was wider than two men. He has been cleaning it, intending to use the long, hollow tube as a carrier for red ochre powder. It is light and strong, distracted by a piece of dried marrow inside. He puts one end to his lips and blows a sharp puff of air through it to clear it. A sound emerges that silences everyone. It is not a tap or a hum. It is a pure, clear, ethereal tone. A whistle, high and mournful, that cuts through the night and seems to hang in the air like a new kind of star. Everyone stops. All eyes are on him and the bone in his hands. He looks at it, astonished. He tries again, this time blowing more gently. The same haunting note sings out. He discovers a small natural hole in the side of the bone. When he covers it with his finger and blows, the note is lower, deeper. When he uncovers it, the higher note returns. He has not just found a sound. He has found a way to control it. He has created the first instrument. Hesitantly, he begins to play. A simple two-note melody that mimics the call of a cuckoo he heard that morning. The rhythm of the stones and hands starts again, softer this time, a bedrock for this new soaring voice. It is a moment of profound and beautiful mystery. What is this thing they are creating? It serves no practical purpose. It cannot start a fire, sharpen a stone, or cross a river. One modern scientist famously called music auditory cheesecake, a delightful but ultimately useless byproduct of other, more important evolutionary developments, like language. But to watch this circle of humans, their faces lit by the fire, their bodies moving as one, their spirits lifted by this patterned sound, is to feel a different truth. Perhaps this useless activity is the most useful of all. Perhaps the unity it forges, the shared joy and sorrow it allows them to express, is the very thing that makes them strong enough to survive in a world of endless challenge. The simple song fades. The last tap of the stones echoes and is gone. The only sound left is the rhythm of the water and the crackle of the fire. But the silence that returns is not the silence from before. It is a silence filled with a new potential, the memory of a shared creation. They have found a new way to speak to the spirits of the world and to the spirits within each other. The last pure note from the bone flute dissolves into the night, leaving a silence that is deeper and more resonant than before. The intense, magical feeling of unity, born from the shared rhythm, slowly fades. But as the momentary trance of the music recedes, the permanent structure that holds them together remains, as solid and real as the ground beneath them. It is an architecture of relationships, an invisible fortress built of bonds and obligations. It has no name, but it is the single most complex and important thing they have ever made. This structure is a grammar of kinship. It governs every interaction, every gesture, every shared piece of food. There are no laws carved in stone, no chiefs to issue decrees. Yet the rules are absolute, learned from birth and as natural as breathing. A child startled by a nightmare stumbles from its mother's side and is immediately gathered into the arms of a man who is the mother's brother. He is not the father, but his duty to comfort and protect the child is unquestioned. In this small, intimate world, the burden and the joy of raising the next generation is a shared current that flows through the entire band. The Western concept of a small nuclear family has not been born yet. Here, the family is the entire group. This invisible grammar is most clearly seen when resources are divided. The next day, one of the hunters returns from the water's edge with a large fish, a prize wrested from the new liquid world they are learning to navigate. He is hungry, his own body tired from the effort, but his own need is not the first to be met. He carries the fish to the fire where the others are gathered. The first and best portion is cut with a sharp flint flake and given not to his own mate, nor to his own child, but to his mate's mother. This act is not simple generosity. It is a reaffirmation of an alliance, a thread that weaves two family lines together. Next, the children and the other elders are given their share. Only then, when the most vulnerable have been cared for, do the hunters themselves eat. This is the ceaseless, life-sustaining flow of reciprocal altruism. It is a system of sharing that functions as a kind of social insurance. The hunter who provides the fish today does so with the deep unspoken understanding that when he returns empty-handed tomorrow, another's catch will feed his family. It is a web of mutual obligation, a constant balancing of debts and credits that are never tallied, but are felt with an intuitive, powerful precision. The human mind, it seems, evolved not just to track animals, but to track relationships, to remember who is reliable, who is generous, and who is family. Within this small, tightly knit group, another deeper rule operates. The young women our protagonist has grown up with, the ones he has played with and learned with, are his sisters, his cousins. He feels a deep bond of affection and duty towards them, but they are not and can never be his mates. This is the great incest taboo, a foundational principle of human society that is as mysterious as it is universal. Where does this powerful prohibition come from? Is it a biological imperative, an instinct that guards the genome against the dangers of inbreeding? Or perhaps it is the single greatest social invention of all time. By forbidding mating within the immediate group, it forces them to look outward. It necessitates building relationships with strangers, transforming other, potentially hostile bands into kin. This rule, this need for exogamy, is the engine that weaves disparate, isolated families into a vast, continent-spanning network of humanity. It is the reason a small, fragile species could conquer the world. But how they managed it, how these small bands arranged to meet and exchange partners in a vast and dangerous landscape, is a profound mystery. Perhaps there were great seasonal gatherings, or perhaps the exchanges were fraught with tension and negotiation. The threads that wove the first wider societies together are now invisible. He looks around the fire at the familiar faces, each one occupying a precise location in his mental map of the world. That is his mother. That is his cousin, the son of his mother's sister, who is almost a brother. That is his mate, a woman who came from a band that lives a moon's journey towards the rising sun, her presence a living treaty between their two peoples. These are not just words. They are the coordinates of his existence, defining his duties, his loyalties, and the very shape of his life. This invisible web of kinship is their masterpiece. It is more adaptable than any tool, more nourishing than any single hunt. It is a flexible, resilient structure that allows them to absorb loss, to share success, and to face the terrifying uncertainties of the world not as a scattering of vulnerable individuals, but as a single, cohesive whole. It is the silent, beating heart of their humanity. The fire crackles, a warm and living heart in the cool night air. The physical world, with its endless demands for food and safety, recedes with the light. In its place, the world of the mind expands, and in this inner world, no one travels further or holds more territory than the old man who sits closest to the flames. He is no longer the swiftest hunter or the keenest eye. His hands, which once could flake a stone into a perfect, leaf-shaped point, are now knotted with age. His value to the band is no longer measured in the strength of his body, but in the vast, invisible landscape of his memory. In a world that has not yet discovered the art of the written mark, he is the only library. His mind is a living repository of their people's entire existence. Every other form of wealth they possess, the tools, the furs, the carefully guarded fire, is temporary. But the knowledge locked within the intricate architecture of this one man's brain is their most precious and irreplaceable inheritance. When the old woman died, they felt the terror of a great library burning, of losing forever their encyclopedia of the plant world. This man is the keeper of all the other volumes. Within his memory, there is a map. It is not a map of lines and symbols, but a map of stories, songs, and sensations. It covers a territory that would take a lifetime to walk, a landscape of mountains and valleys, rivers and coastlines that he has never seen with his own eyes, but which he knows intimately from the words of his father and his father's father before him. He can describe a hidden spring in a desert 2 seasons walk to the south, a place his own band has not needed to visit for 2 generations, but whose location is preserved in a story, waiting for the day it is needed again. Within his memory, there is a book of laws. It is the complex, unwritten grammar of kinship they all live by. He is the final arbiter, the one who can trace the intricate lines of descent and alliance back through the generations. When a question of obligation arises, or when a young person is ready to seek a mate from a neighboring band, it is his mind that holds the knowledge of who is related to whom, ensuring the great taboo is honored and the vital threads of alliance are maintained. And within his memory, there is a history. He is the keeper of the epic events that have shaped them. He remembers the long dry, when the rivers shrank to threads, and the sky was a merciless brass bowl for 2 full turns of the seasons. He tells the story of how they survived by learning to dig for water in the dry riverbeds, a lesson learned at a terrible cost, now preserved as a narrative to protect future generations. He tells of the time the sky mountain to the west spoke with a voice of thunder and bled fire down its slopes. He even tells the story passed down to him of the first time they met the other people, the silent, strong folk who were not of their kind. A story that reminds them the world is wider and more mysterious than they can imagine. How is this vast store of information passed on with any accuracy? This is one of the quiet triumphs of the pre-literate mind. The knowledge is not delivered in dry lectures. It is encoded in more durable forms. It is sung in the chants that rise around the fire. It is given a rhythm that makes it memorable, locking the words into a pattern that is resistant to change. And most of all, it is told in stories. The stories are not mere entertainment for the children. They are complex mnemonic devices, intricate vessels for carrying vital information. A fable about a trickster jackal might contain a detailed description of the landscape. A myth about the moon's journey across the sky is a coded lesson in celestial navigation. The responsibility of this role is immense. It is the burden of being the sole anchor of a people's identity in the ceaseless flow of time. He must constantly rehearse the old stories, walking the pathways of his mind to ensure they remain clear. He fears the slow creeping fog of forgetting, the possibility that a single, vital detail, the name of an ancestor, the antidote to a poison, might slip away into the dark. His mind is not truly his own. It is a sacred trust, a vessel for the collective consciousness of his people. As the fire burns low, a young girl, her chin resting on her knees, asks him to tell the story of the first hunter and the star elk again. The old man smiles. He has told this story 100 times. He begins, his voice taking on the familiar rhythmic cadence of the teller. He is not just entertaining a child. He is planting a seed. He is carefully, patiently, beginning the long, slow process of transferring the library volume by volume into the minds of the next generation. The student has appeared, and so the lesson begins. The body grows frail, but the story, if passed on, can live forever. The band is on the move again. The memory of the old woman's grave is now a landmark in their minds, a fixed point in their story, but the story must go on. The invisible map of the world that the old man carries in his head has spoken of a place. Many days' walk from here, a coastal estuary, sheltered from the wind, where the fish are said to be plentiful, and the flint is of a rare, excellent quality. Most of the band have never seen this place. For them, it is a location in a myth, but for the elder it is real, a memory passed down from his own grandfather. And so they walk, a line of trust stretched between the past and the future. But how do they navigate this path? How do they hold a straight course through a world without roads or signposts? They do it by reading a different kind of map, one that is written into the very fabric of the world, a language of direction that our modern senses have long forgotten. Their compass is the sun, their clock is the shadow, and their map is the living world itself. Our protagonist, now a man in his prime, walks near the front of the line. His gaze is constantly scanning, not just for danger or for food, but for direction. The sun rising on his right tells him they are walking north. But his understanding is far more nuanced than that. He knows that as the seasons turn, the sun's rising point will drift along the horizon. He knows its precise arc on this particular day of this particular season. At any moment, he can glance at the length of his own shadow on the ground and know how much of the day's light is left. The sun is not just a ball of fire. It is a masterful timekeeper, a reliable celestial guide. At night, the map of the stars which he first learned to see as a boy becomes their guide. They know the one star in the north that does not move, the silent pivot around which the entire cosmos turns. They know the shapes that rise and set with the seasons, the stellar herds that migrate across the sky, marking the time for the animal herds on the earth below to do the same. But the clues are not just in the sky. The air itself speaks to them of direction. In this land, the prevailing wind blows from the west, from across the great interior of the continent. It is a constant, gentle pressure on their left cheek as they walk north. Our protagonist can see its work everywhere. The trees all have a slight, almost imperceptible lean to the east, their branches growing a little thicker and longer on the side, sheltered from the wind's constant push. Even the patterns of the ripples on a puddle of water can tell him the wind's direction. It is an invisible, ever-present compass. The land, too, is a page of text to be read. He knows that in this part of the world, the slopes of hills that face the south receive more sun, and so the vegetation there is different. Drier with tougher, more sparse grasses. The northern slopes, cooler and damper, are home to a thicker moss. The very color and texture of the earth changes in subtle ways, and each change is a confirmation of their position on the mental map they carry. Since their discovery of the Great Water, they have a whole new vocabulary of navigation. They can read the patterns of the waves. The long rolling swells of the ocean have a consistency, a direction that tells of the winds far out at sea. When they are on their raft, even out of sight of land, these swells can keep them on a steady course. They have also learned to watch the birds. The gannets and the petrels are true seabirds who can stay at sea for days. But the terns and the gulls must return to land at night to roost. In the late afternoon, the sight of a flock of gulls flying with purpose in one direction is a living, breathing arrow, pointing the way to the nearest shore. They are not the only navigators in this world. They are surrounded by a wisdom far older than their own. The great herds of antelope they sometimes follow are on their own immense journeys, guided by an instinctual map of the seasons. The sky is marked by the great V-shaped skeins of migrating geese, their calls echoing down as they fly an unerring path to their summer breeding grounds. Our ancestors learned to tap into this global network of movement, to understand that these animal migrations were another set of lines on the world's great map. How the human brain synthesizes all this disparate information, the angle of the sun, the memory of the stars, the feel of the wind, the lean of the trees, the flight of the birds, into a single coherent sense of direction, is a profound mystery. To us, who navigate by street signs and glowing screens, this ability to build a detailed, three-dimensional map of a vast landscape in the mind feels like a superpower. Was it an innate skill, a part of our evolutionary inheritance that has since grown quiet from disuse? Or was it a true science, passed down through generations, a testament to the computational power of a mind that had to find its own way? As evening falls, they arrive at a ridge overlooking a new valley. The old man squints, and a slow look of recognition dawns on his face. He points a trembling finger. There, his voice rasps, the river that runs like a snake. My grandfather told me of this place. They were never lost. Their path was not a straight line, but a winding, intelligent dance with the landscape, guided by a library of memories and the ever-present clues of the natural world. They arrived at the promised land, the sheltered estuary where the river meets the sea. And it was just as the old man's story had described it. The waters teemed with fish, fat and slow in the brackish pools. The cliffs nearby held veins of the finest flint. a beautiful dark gray stone that flaked into razor-sharp edges. For a full turning of the seasons, the band lived in a state of grace. The constant, gnawing anxiety of the next meal was gone. The children grew fat and strong. The ache for the horizon was, for the first time, quieted. They had found their home, a place to anchor their stories, perhaps even a place to build a new graveyard for generations to come. But the world is not a story, and it does not always obey the wisdom of the ancestors. The first sign that something was wrong was a failure of the sky. The season of the great rains was due. The air should have grown heavy, the clouds thick and dark, but the sky remained a pale, indifferent blue. The winds that should have carried the scent of rain instead brought a dry, dusty chill from the north. The tribe would look to the old man, but he would only shake his head. The stories in his mind spoke of droughts, of the long dry, but this felt different. It was not just an absence of rain. It was a deep, fundamental shift in the character of the world. The familiar pulse of the seasons, the rhythm they had navigated their lives by, began to break down. The great flocks of migratory birds that should have darkened the skies on their journey south never appeared. The broad-leafed trees that lined the river, which should have been heavy with fruit, produced only a few small withered nubs before their leaves turned a sickly yellow and fell months before their time. A new kind of cold began to creep into the world, a deep, penetrating cold that the sun seemed powerless to warm. One morning, they awoke to a sight that struck a primal fear into their hearts. The edges of the quiet tidal pools were laced with a thin crystalline skin of ice. Water had turned to stone. This was a magic they had never seen, a violation of the natural order. The world was behaving in ways for which their knowledge, their entire library of memory, had no explanation. They were living off the map of their own history. This was the reality of the Great Pleistocene. It was not a single, stable ice age, but a chaotic, unpredictable climate, prone to sudden and violent swings. We can now read the story of these changes in the layers of ancient ice cores drilled from Greenland. They tell of times when the average temperature could plummet by several degrees in the span of a single human lifetime. Our ancestors did not have the luxury of a stable climate. They lived on a knife's edge in a world that could transform itself around them without warning. Their survival now depended not on the old knowledge, but on their capacity for rapid innovation. The land, increasingly frozen and barren, offered less and less. The great herds had vanished, retreating south to chase a warmth that no longer existed here. The band turned its hopes to the sea, the great water that seemed less affected by the sky's cold mood. The raft, once a tool of exploration, became their lifeline. They learned to fish in the deeper, colder waters, to harvest the shellfish that clung to the freezing rocks. They needed to defeat the cold itself. Their simple hide cloaks were not enough. A new technology was born from desperation. Using a sharp, pointed sliver of bone and awl, the women began to punch a series of small, regular holes along the edges of cured animal skins. Then, using thin, strong strips of sinew as thread, they started to stitch the hides together, creating fitted garments, crude trousers, and tunics that could trap the body's precious warmth. It was a slow, laborious process, but with each stitch, they were building a new shield against the hostile world. The question of how our species, a slender primate, born in the warmth of Africa, survived these repeated brutal climate shocks is a profound mystery. Other human species, like the powerfully built, cold-adapted Neanderthals, would eventually falter and disappear. What was our secret? Was it this technological flexibility? Our willingness to eat almost anything, plants, shellfish, insects, small game, that made us adaptable generalists? Or was it our most unique invention of all, the wide, complex social network that allowed different bands to support each other, to share information and resources through the hardest of times? The cold deepens. The winter is no longer a season. It is the new state of the world. The estuary, once a paradise, has become a frozen trap. The old man gathers the band around the fire, which they must now feed constantly. He tells them that the stories of their ancestors have ended. This is a new chapter, and they must write it themselves. They face a stark choice. They can stay and trust in their new technologies to see them through the endless winter. Or they can become nomads again, abandoning their home to walk south, chasing a memory of warmth, on a journey with no map and no destination. Our protagonist stands on a windswept cliff, his new stitched hide tunic pulled tight against the wind. He looks out at the gray, angry sea. The world he was born into, the world of his father and his grandfather, is gone. It has been replaced by this colder, harder reality. He looks at his people, their faces illuminated by a fire that seems to give less warmth than it once did. They are survivors, living in the ruins of a broken climate. Their only hope is to trust in their own restless ingenuity, their ability to adapt and to endure. The world has turned against them. The familiar sun is a stranger. The winds bring a hostile cold, and the land that once nourished them has become a frozen, empty stage. The choice to walk was not a choice at all. It was the only option left. They are now a people in exodus, climate refugees on a desperate, southbound search for a forgotten warmth. They are weaker now, thinner, and the gnawing hunger that they had briefly escaped has returned as a constant companion. They are walking through a country that is not their own, a landscape for which the old man's mental maps have no words. Every unfamiliar hill, every strange cluster of trees is a reminder of their vulnerability. One morning, the scouts who move ahead of the main group return with a silent, urgent warning. They have found signs, not the tracks of an animal, but of people, a deliberately broken branch on a game trail, the cold but not ancient ashes of a hearth. They are in another band's territory. A deep, collective caution descends upon them. Every stranger is a potential threat, a competitor for the scarce resources in this new, hard world. They remember the encounter with the other kind of people, the Neanderthals, but the danger from their own species can be just as great. They move with the stealth of a hunting party, their footsteps soft on the frozen ground. From a high wooded ridge they finally see them, a small camp, a plume of smoke rising from a fire in a sheltered hollow. There are perhaps as many of them as in their own depleted band. For a long, tense hour, the two groups watch one another across the valley, a silent, static confrontation. The men hold their spears, their bodies taut with the possibility of violence. An attack would be disastrous for both sides, a desperate gamble that would leave even the victors weakened and wounded. There must be another way. Our protagonist, his authority now solidified not by age, but by the quiet confidence he has shown through their trials, decides to attempt something new, something for which there is no story or precedent. He calls for a halt. He tells the other hunters to lower their spears, to show that they are not poised for an attack. He then walks out into the open space between the two groups, his hands held up and empty, to show he carries no weapon. But his hands are not entirely empty. In his palm, he holds a single, beautiful object. It is a large, spiraled whelk shell, its surface a swirl of cream and pale orange, polished to a soft, pearlescent sheen by the endless action of the waves. It is a treasure from their old home, the one by the sea. He has carried it all this way, a heavy, useless thing, for no reason he could name other than that its beauty was a reminder of a better time. It cannot cut meat, it cannot scrape a hide, it cannot keep him warm. Its only function is to be beautiful. He walks to a large, flat stone that sits midway between the two camps. He gently places the shell upon the rock, a single point of oceanic grace in this harsh inland world. Then he slowly backs away, returning to his own people. The gesture hangs in the cold, clear air. It is a question. It is an offering. It is a statement that says, we are not just hungry mouths to feed. We are people who have known beauty, who have had enough surplus to carry a useless, lovely thing this far. We come not only to take, but to give. The other band is silent, watching this strange, unprecedented act. After a long moment, an old woman detaches herself from their group and walks to the stone. She looks at the shell, at its exotic shape, its alien texture. She picks it up, feeling its smoothness, holding a piece of the distant sea in her hand. She understands the language of the gift. She turns and goes back to her camp. She returns not with a weapon, but with a gift of her own. She places it on the stone, a large translucent piece of obsidian, a volcanic glass that shines like polished night. Their own flint is gray and opaque. This material is a revelation, a stone of captured darkness. The exchange is complete. A treaty has been signed, a peace negotiated, without a single word being spoken. The language of the gifted shell has proven more eloquent than any sound. The tension breaks like a melting sheet of ice. Slowly, cautiously, the two groups approach each other. That night they share a single, large fire. They use gestures and a few shared sounds to communicate. They share what little food they have. The children, unbound by adult caution, are the first to bridge the gap. Their play a universal language. The gifted objects, the shell and the obsidian, are passed from hand to hand around the fire, each one a curiosity, a symbol of a world beyond their own. Archaeologists have found the faint trails of these first conversations across ancient Europe and Africa. Shells from the coast found hundreds of miles inland, special types of stone transported far from their native quarries. These objects were the threads of the first social network, a web of connection and reciprocal obligation that stretched across vast distances. This simple exchange of gifts was the birth of all trade, all diplomacy. It was the discovery that a stranger does not have to be an enemy. They can be a partner, an ally, a future. As he drifts to sleep, our protagonist clutches the piece of obsidian. It is cool and sharp, a piece of the deep earth. By giving away a piece of his past, a shell from a home he can never return to, he has been given a piece of their future, an alliance, a shared hope. They are no longer refugees alone in the wilderness. They are neighbors. The years have flowed past like the great river they once learned to cross, a current that has smoothed some stones and carved deep canyons into others. Our protagonist is now an old man. He sits closest to the fire, not by right of strength, but by right of the seasons he has witnessed. The firelight he watches is the same fire, a single continuous flame passed down through his entire life, but the face it illuminates is a different country now. It is a landscape of deep lines, of skin weathered like an ancient hide. The children of the great cold are now the tribe's strongest hunters, the mothers of a new generation. He is what he once learned from. He is the elder. A young boy practicing with a piece of flint and a hammerstone cries out in pain. A misplaced strike has sent a sharp flake into his hand, opening a bleeding gash. The boy's mother rushes to clean the wound with a poultice of chewed leaves. The old man beckons the boy closer. He does not offer a remedy, but a story. He turns his own gnarled forearm to the firelight, revealing a long white scar that stands out against his sun-darkened skin. The stone teaches the hand, he says, his voice a dry rustle of leaves. He tells the boy of the day, a lifetime ago, when he was making his first truly beautiful hand axe, and in a moment of prideful carelessness, the stone had taught him the same lesson. The scar is the memory. The pain is the teacher. His body is a map of this accumulated knowledge. It is a history of their people, written not in ochre on a cave wall, but in the scar tissue of a life lived fully and perilously. Each mark is a chapter, each ache a footnote. To the young, his body is a living library of warnings and wisdom. They trace the faint, puckered scar on his calf, and he tells them the story of the great hunt, of the moment the giant elk had turned, its horn tearing through his flesh. The story is not of his own pain, but of the moment the other hunters had fulfilled their silent pact, distracting the beast and dragging him to safety. The scar, then, is not a symbol of injury, but a testament to their sacred bond of cooperation. He holds up his hands. The knuckles are swollen, the fingers bent. These are the hands that held the first flute. Its notes a strange magic in the night. They are the hands that lashed together the first raft, that gripped its rough wood as it tilted on the alien water. They are the hands that sprinkled the first red ochre on the body of the departed old woman, a gesture that gave their grief a shape. His hands are a record of every tool he has ever made, every burden he has ever carried. The deep lines that fan out from his eyes are not just from age. They are the grooves carved by years of squinting into the brutal, relentless wind of the great cold. They are the memory of a world that had tried to break them, a world where the sun gave light, but no warmth. They are the map of a climate that failed, and of the resilience that allowed them to endure it. To have lived so long was a triumph against impossible odds. We once imagined the lives of our ancestors as universally short and brutal, a desperate scramble ending before the age of 30. But the bones they left behind tell a different story. They speak of healed fractures, of individuals who survived debilitating injuries, of elders who lived for decades with the chronic pains of arthritis. This longevity was not a miracle. It was a testament to the power of their society. The sick and the injured were not abandoned. They were cared for. The old were not a burden. They were the keepers of the most vital resource, knowledge. Their greatest adaptation was not a sharp spear, but a compassionate community. Not all the scars are visible. There are maps etched into his mind that no one else can see. He can still feel the profound shock of seeing the Neanderthal woman's face. The moment his understanding of human was shattered and rebuilt into something larger and more complex. He can still feel the strange, hopeful weight of the gifted piece of obsidian in his palm, the memory of the day they learned to turn a stranger into a neighbor. And in the quietest hours of the night, he can still see the face of the old woman they laid to rest, the first grave, the place where they learned that love could be stronger than death. He has become a story himself now. The children listen to his tales not as fables, but as the living history of their world. He is the bridge that connects their small present moment to the vast, deep past. He is teaching them how to read the world, not just the world of tracks and weather, but the inner world of a human life. He shows them that a wound can heal into a warning, that pain can ripen into wisdom, and that a scar is simply a story that has found a permanent home in the body. The firelight softens the old man's weathered face. He has told his story, the story of the scar, and now a thoughtful silence has settled. The young boy with the freshly cut hand is no longer focused on his own small pain, but on the old man himself, his gaze direct and filled with a new, deep-seated curiosity. In that gaze, the old man recognizes the spark. It is the silent question that all knowledge keepers wait for, the sign that a mind is not just willing, but eager to receive. He knows that the stories are only half of the inheritance. The other half must be taught through the hands. The next day, he leads the boy away from the camp, down to the gravel banks of the river, where the stones lie in their millions. This is the first classroom. The lesson is not a lecture. It is an immersion in the sensory world. The stone speaks. The old man rasps, his voice soft. You must learn to listen. He picks up a rounded cobble of granite and hands it to the boy. Then he picks up a nodule of flint. He shows the boy how to feel the subtle difference in weight, in texture, in the way the cold of the stone feels against the skin. He taps each one with a hammerstone. The granite gives a dull, lifeless thud. The flint answers with a clear, high-pitched ring, a note of pure possibility. He makes the boy do the same, again and again, until the boy's ears, not his mind, can distinguish the good stone from the bad. They return to the camp with a few carefully chosen cores. They sit facing each other, the stones between them, like a shared meal. The old man takes a hammerstone, and his movements become a slow, deliberate performance. He's no longer just a toolmaker. He is a teacher, and every gesture is a line in a textbook that has never been written. He shows the boy how to cradle the core in his palm, cushioning it with a piece of leather. He demonstrates the angle of the strike, the sharp, confident flick of the wrist. A perfect, sharp-edged flake detaches and falls to the ground. Then he hands the stones to the boy. This is the heart of all cultural transmission, the delicate moment when knowledge must leap from one mind to another. The boy imitates the motion, but his strike is hesitant, the angle wrong. The hammerstone glances off with a useless clack. The old man does not speak. He simply reaches out and takes the boy's small hands in his own. He repositions the boy's grip, adjusts the tilt of the core, curls the boy's fingers around the hammerstone. Together, their 4 hands holding the 2 stones, they perform the motion again. This time, a flake detaches. It is thick and clumsy, but it is a start. This is true teaching. It is more than just allowing another to watch. It requires a theory of mind, the ability for the old man to imagine himself inside the boy's mind, to understand his confusion, to anticipate his mistakes. This patient, guided, hands-on correction is the very engine of cumulative culture. It is the ratchet that allows skills to be passed on with high fidelity, ensuring that the knowledge of a million years of trial and error is not lost in a single, fumbled generation. When this ability to truly teach first evolved is a deep and subtle mystery, but it was perhaps the most important cognitive leap our ancestors ever made. Day after day they practice. The ground around them becomes a workshop, littered with the debris of their lessons. The boy's hands become a testament to his effort, calloused and crisscrossed with small cuts, but his movements lose their hesitation. They become fluid, economical, confident. He learns to read the story of the stone, to see the faint stress lines and ripples that tell him where it wants to break. He is no longer just hitting a rock. He is in conversation with it. Finally, after many days of work, he accomplishes the task. He takes a single, good core, and in a series of clean, confident strikes, he produces a tool. It is a hand axe, smaller than the ones the hunters carry, and it lacks the perfect, elegant symmetry of a master's work. But its edges are sharp, its point is clear, and it fits comfortably in his hand. He holds it up, his chest swelling with a pride that is deep and silent. The old man takes the tool from him. He turns it over, feeling its balance. He runs a calloused thumb carefully along its edge. He looks from the stone to the boy and back to the stone. Then he gives a slow, deliberate nod. In that single silent gesture, a great and ancient torch is passed. The fire of knowledge, the unbroken chain of skill that connects them back to the very first hominin who ever intentionally fractured a stone, has been successfully passed to a new generation. That evening, when the hunters bring back a small deer, the boy is given the honor of making one of the first cuts with the axe he made himself. The tool works. The old man watches from his place by the fire. He has given away a piece of himself, but in doing so, he has not become less. He has become, in a small way, immortal. He has planted his knowledge in the mind of the future. A catastrophe, swift and merciless, falls from the sky. The cold that has haunted them for seasons coalesces into a storm of unparalleled fury. A driving, horizontal sleet, born of a wind from the frozen north, sweeps into their rock shelter. It is a force of nature that cannot be shielded against. The fire, their single, continuous, and most precious possession, hisses and sputters under the assault. For a few desperate moments, the band huddles around it, using their own bodies, their hide cloaks as a final, futile wall. But the storm is too powerful. With a final, sorrowful sigh of steam, the last ember dies. The heart of their world goes out. Silence. And then a darkness more profound than any they have known. It is a blackness, filled with the roaring of the wind and the biting, relentless cold. The threat of fire, the single flame they had carried and guarded for generations, a life form that connected them directly to their most distant ancestors, has been broken. A fear colder than any wind settles over the band. They are adrift in the night, a tiny fragile island of warmthless life in a great frozen ocean. The old man, his voice barely a whisper against the storm, tells a story of a time, long ago in his grandfather's memory, when the fire was lost. It was a story of a desperate, months-long search for a lightning-struck tree. It was a story of great suffering. The storm passes with the dawn, leaving behind a world draped in a thin shroud of ice. The cold is absolute. Huddled together, their shared body heat a pathetic defense. They face the grim reality. They cannot survive long without the fire. The old knowledge offers no hope, only the prospect of a long and likely fatal search. The young boy, the one the old man has been teaching, is restless with a cold and fearful energy. He takes a piece of dry wood, salvaged from the driest part of the shelter, and a sharp flint awl. He begins to drill a hole into the wood, an idle, repetitive task to keep his hands from freezing and his mind from despair. He works with a frantic speed, his hands a blur. After a minute, he stops, his muscles aching. He feels a strange warmth on his fingertips. He touches the wood around the hole he has drilled. It is hot. A thin, delicate wisp of blue smoke, carrying the sharp, pleasant smell of scorched wood, rises from the hole and vanishes in the cold air. He stares, his mind racing. Friction makes warmth. Everyone knew this. But this was more than warmth. This was smoke. And smoke was the brother of fire. He calls to the old man, his voice tight with a strange new excitement. The old man comes, his movements stiff with cold. He looks at the hole, sniffs the air. He sees what the boy sees. Not a fact, but a question. A wild, impossible possibility. The boy's frantic, accidental discovery becomes a deliberate, desperate experiment. The entire band gathers to watch, their faces a mixture of hope and doubt. They choose their materials with the care of a sacred ritual. A fireboard made from a piece of soft, dry driftwood. A drill, a straight, hard spindle of wood, its point sharpened by the boy with one of his own flint tools. He carves a small depression in the board, a nest for the drill's point, with a notch on the side to catch the dust. The boy places the point of the drill in the nest and begins to roll the spindle between his flattened palms, pushing down with all his might. It is exhausting, awkward work. His hands slip. The drill wobbles. After a few moments, he is panting, and another hunter takes his place, seamlessly continuing the motion. They work in a relay, a human engine devoted to a single task, their movements a frantic prayer. The old man kneels beside them, his voice a low, encouraging chant. Faster, harder, the wood is waking. A black powder, fine as dust, begins to build up in the notch. The smoke thickens, the smell of hot wood now sharp and pungent. The air is electric with a tension that has nothing to do with the cold. They are on the verge of something, a doorway to a new world. And then it happens. In the heart of the black powder, a tiny red eye opens. A spark. It is a minuscule glowing ember, a captured speck of the sun, and it is the most beautiful thing any of them have ever seen. There is a collective, indrawn breath. Everything is still. With the reverence of a priest, the old man takes the fireboard. He tips the precious glowing coal into a waiting nest of the driest tinder imaginable. Scraped fungus, milkweed down, the inner bark of a cedar tree. He holds the small bundle in his cupped hands, puts it to his lips, and begins to breathe. It is not a harsh breath, but a slow, steady, loving exhalation, the breath of life itself. The ember glows brighter. The smoke becomes a thick, white cloud, and then with a soft, magical whoosh, the tinder bursts into a clean, bright, dancing flame. A sound half shout, half sob erupts from the tribe. A new son has been born, not from the sky, but from their own hands, from their own will. This fire is different. The old fire was a gift they had to keep. This fire is a power they now possess. Archaeologists, can rarely find the evidence of this momentous invention. The simple wood rots and vanishes. But they know it happened, for with this knowledge, our ancestors were finally untethered. They were no longer dependent on luck or geology. They could carry the idea of fire and create it wherever they went. It was this power that allowed them to survive the deepest winters and walk to the furthest corners of the globe. They build the new fire into a roaring, triumphant blaze, its warmth more welcome than any they have ever known. They look at the simple pieces of wood and then at their own hands with a new and profound awe. They have not just conquered the cold, they have unlocked one of the universe's most fundamental secrets. The seasons turn, and the great cold, which had seemed like a new and permanent reality, begins to loosen its grip. The world, in its own slow, inexorable rhythm, is healing. The rains return to their proper time, and the grasses grow a little taller each year. The memory of the endless winter is now a story, a dark fable the old man tells around a fire that no longer feels quite so desperate. The tribe has survived, but it has not survived unchanged. The greatest change of all can be seen in the eyes of the children who were born after the great invention. The old man, our protagonist, watches his granddaughter. She is a child of 5 or 6 summers, born into a world he helped create, but which he can never fully inhabit. He watches her play, and in her casual, thoughtless confidence, he sees the map of a different reality. She has never known the deep, soul-gnawing fear of the fire going out. She has never known a night where the darkness was absolute, a predator that could not be beaten back. For her, fire is not a precious, singular entity to be guarded with their very lives. Fire is a verb. It is something you do. Her world is filled with a tool her grandfather never knew in his own childhood, the fire drill. It is not a sacred or magical object to her. It is a common thing, as unremarkable as a digging stick or a clamshell bowl. She has her own miniature version, 2 small sticks she plays with, clumsily imitating the spinning motion of her father's hands. To the old man who remembers a world without this power, the sight is a constant, quiet miracle. To her, it is just a game. This one invention has rewritten the rules of their existence. A small hunting party prepares to leave for a few days, tracking a herd of deer. The old man watches them. In his youth, such a journey would have involved the immense burden of carrying a smoldering, carefully wrapped coal, a constant source of anxiety. Now, the hunters simply tuck their fire-making kits, the familiar drill and board, into their hide pouches. This simple, casual act is a revolution. It is the gift of freedom. It means they can travel lighter, faster, and further. They can make camp wherever they find themselves, calling a hearth into existence from the dry wood around them. The world has shrunk, and their own confidence has grown. This confidence is the defining feature of his granddaughter's generation. They are less fearful. The stories of the great beasts of the night, which once kept children huddled close to the fire's light, are now just exciting tales. The darkness is no longer a conquering enemy. It is simply the absence of a light they can create whenever they wish. This psychological shift is profound. It breeds a bolder, more curious kind of human, one who sees a new cave not as a potential tomb, but as a place to explore, knowing they can carry their own private sun with them. The old man sees this in his granddaughter, and he feels a mixture of deep pride and a strange, unnameable sense of loss. He is proud of the security he has given her, but he misses the deep, sacred reverence they once held for that single, precious flame. The power of fire-making has unlocked other doors. It is a key that opens other keys. They have learned to use fire to harden the points of their wooden spears, making them nearly as effective as stone. They have learned to use fire to manage the landscape, burning off old, dead grass to encourage the growth of the fresh green shoots that attract grazing animals. The pace of innovation, once so glacially slow, seems to be quickening. For 1,000,000 years, the hand axe was the only tool that mattered. Now, in the space of a single lifetime, he has seen the invention of the raft, the the needle, the flute, and the fire drill. Why this sudden acceleration? Was it the pressure of the great cold that forced their minds down new pathways? Was it the meeting of different peoples, the exchange of gifts and ideas that sparked new ways of thinking? Or was there a change in the human brain itself, a new fluency in the language of cause and effect, of seeing the world not just as it is, but as a collection of problems to be solved? The question of why progress happens in sudden, unpredictable leaps, rather than a slow, steady climb, is one of the deepest riddles of the human journey. The old man tries to explain his past to his granddaughter. He tries to tell her of the great loss, the night the fire died, and a terror unlike any other descended upon them. She listens attentively, her eyes wide, but he can see that she doesn't truly feel it. A world where you cannot make fire is to her a myth. It is a story from the dreamtime, as remote and strange as a story of men who could walk on water. He looks from her small, confident face to the dancing flames of the fire. He sees the same light that has warmed his people for 1,000 generations, but its meaning has been utterly transformed. For him, it is a symbol of a desperate struggle and a miraculous victory. For her, it is a simple fact of life, an assumption about the world she was born into. He has endured the revolution so that she could be born in the nation that came after. He sees the world reflected in her eyes, a world with less fear, less awe, and more power. And he knows that this is the strange, bittersweet nature of a gift that is truly given. The seasons continue their great, slow wheeling dance, but for the old man, the journey is over. His world has shrunk to the size of the campsite, to the small sunlit patch of ground where he sits during the day, and to the familiar circle of firelight at night. His legs, which have walked across landscapes that are now only myths, will no longer carry him. His hands, which have shaped stone and wood and the very course of his people's history, now rest, trembling slightly in his lap. The great outward exploration has ended. A different kind of journey has begun. A slow, meandering walk backward through the vast and winding country of his own mind. Time, which once flowed like a river in one clear direction, has begun to eddy and pool. The past is no longer a distant country. It has moved in and now occupies the same space as the present. He feels the warmth of today's fire on his wrinkled skin, but in the same moment, he feels the biting, impossible cold of the endless winter, the memory, a ghost that still shivers in his bones. He hears the laughter of his granddaughter as she plays, and it is a delightful, present sound, but it is woven through with the high, ethereal note of the first flute he ever heard, a sound from a lifetime ago that is somehow just as real, just as present. His daughter brings him a piece of grilled fish on a leaf. The taste is good, but it is not one taste. It is a chorus of all the meals he has ever eaten. It is the taste of the first sweet, roasted tuber, shared in a world where fire was still a miracle. It is the rich, gamey taste of the great elk, the prize from a hunt that now feels more vivid than yesterday. It is the sharp, salty taste of the first shellfish gathered at the edge of the great, mysterious water. The present is no longer a solid thing. It is a thin, translucent veil, and the bright, powerful colors of the past shine through it everywhere. The camp is full of ghosts, but they are gentle companions. He sees the face of the old woman, the one who taught him the language of the leaves, and he sits with her in a comfortable, long-practiced silence. He sees the face of the friend he lost during the Great Migration, and in his mind, they walk together again, young and strong, reading the stories in the dust. The boundary between the waking world and the world of dreams has become soft and indistinct. His life is no longer a story he tells. It is a landscape he inhabits. The strong, confident I that has been the hero of his own life, the one who made the decisions and felt the emotions, is beginning to dissolve. He is becoming less a single person and more a collection of moments, a constellation of memories. He is the terror and the wonder in the painted cave. He is the quiet satisfaction of a perfectly shaped axe. He is the shared, rhythmic pulse of the first song. He is the heavy, aching weight of the first grave. He is no longer just the keeper of the library. He has become the library itself, its pages turning in a slow, random breeze. And in this slow, quiet dissolution, the final, deepest question of all begins to surface. What is this inner light that has witnessed so much? This consciousness that woke in a world of unnamed sensations and learned to build a universe of meaning, of kinship, of gods and spirits? It has been the silent audience in the private theater of his mind for his entire life. It has felt love and fear, pride and grief. It has looked up at the stars in wonder. Now, as the light itself begins to grow dim, as the stage grows dark, the question is no longer an abstract one. Where did this mysterious awareness come from? And where does the light go when it goes out? His mind's journey is coming full circle. The world, which he had spent a lifetime learning to name, to categorize, to understand, is slowly returning to its original state. The sharp, defined edges of the world are blurring. The intricate grammar of kinship and story is fading. The world is once again becoming a simple, unmediated flow of sensation. The fire is warmth, the sun is light. A touch is pressure. His granddaughter comes and places her small, warm hand in his. He feels it. A simple, direct connection. He looks at her face, and for a moment, the fog lifts. He sees her clearly, the future. He smiles, a slow, faint movement of his lips. Then the moment passes. The story is ending. The narrator is growing quiet. All that is left is the gentle, slow, and silent drift back into the great, unnamed mystery. The last breath leaves the old man's body as gently as a feather drifting on the wind. It is not a moment of struggle or fear, but a slow, quiet fading. A final dissolving back into the great silence from which he came, the inner world of memory and sensation. The entire universe that was his consciousness has winked out. The library is now empty, but its knowledge, its stories, its very essence has already been copied and passed on. The books are now walking and breathing around the fire. There is grief, deep and resonant. He was the trunk of their family tree. But their mourning is now channeled through the grace of a ritual he helped to invent. There is no confusion about what must be done. They know how to say goodbye. They lay his body to rest near the riverbank, curled on its side as if in a deep sleep. His granddaughter, a young woman now, places a necklace of her own making, of drilled fish vertebrae and iridescent shells around his neck. The young man he mentored, now the tribe's most skilled maker, places a perfect, newly made fire drill in his hands, a tool for his journey into the spirit world. They cover his body with earth, and with the brilliant yellow ochre that was the fruit of his first diplomacy. The act of remembrance he gave them now cradles him in his final peace. In the days and weeks that follow, his absence is a palpable silence, but his presence is everywhere. His legacy is not a monument of stone, for they build none. It is a living, breathing thing woven into the fabric of their daily lives. When a hunter hardens the point of a spear in the fire, using a technique the old man discovered, his knowledge is there. When a mother soothes a crying child by humming a simple two-note melody on a bone flute, his music is there. When a difficult decision must be made, the new elders of the tribe will speak his stories, using their narrative logic to find a path through the present trouble. His wisdom is there. His echo is in the hands of the young man he taught, who now sits patiently with another, smaller boy, guiding his hands in the patient, frustrating art of turning stone into a tool. It is in the voice of his granddaughter, who now tells his stories to the youngest children, her cadence and her pauses an unconscious imitation of his own. The great invisible fire of culture, the sum of all their knowledge, has been passed. His life was a single crucial spark in that unbroken 2 million-year-old flame. And now let our perspective pull back, From this small grieving band by a nameless river to the great wide canvas of the world. At this very moment, thousands of other bands just like this one are scattered across the continents. In each one, a similar quiet drama unfolds. In each one, a new tool is being invented, a new social rule is being tested, a new story is being told. A vast interconnected web of minds is at work, each one a small flickering candle, but together they are beginning to form a light that will one day illuminate the entire planet. This one anonymous man, whose life we have imagined, was not a king or a hero. He never had a name that would survive a single generation, yet his life was more consequential than that of any emperor. The challenges he faced and the solutions he and his people discovered were not unique. They were the universal challenges and discoveries of our species. The spark of creative thought that allowed him to see a raft in a fallen log. The leap of empathy that allowed him to see a neighbor in a stranger. The flash of genius that allowed him to create fire from friction. These were the moments that defined our path. The echo of his life has never truly faded. It is in the very structure of our minds, which are shaped to learn and to teach. It is in the syntax of our language, which may have been born from the sequential logic of toolmaking. It is in our restless desire to explore the next valley, the other shore, the distant star. He is our ancestor in the most profound sense, not through a direct and traceable line of blood, but through the unbroken, ever-expanding inheritance of culture. The quiet world he inhabited is the soil from which our own noisy, complex, and beautiful world has grown. And so our long journey is at an end. We have walked with one of our most distant ancestors, feeling the first cool morning of consciousness on our skin, and we have sat with him by his last fire, feeling the slow dissolution of a life into the great silence. The questions he faced are still with us, wrapped in different clothes, but the same in their essential form. How do we survive in a changing world? How do we build a community of trust? How do we give meaning to our losses? And what is our duty to the generations that will follow our own? The story of his life, a single flickering flame in the immense darkness of deep time, has now returned to the quiet from which it came. The painted animals on the cave wall are still running in the eternal dark. The gifted shell still holds the echo of a distant ocean, and the stars continue their slow, silent wheeling, indifferent to the small, brief lives that unfold beneath them. The great work of becoming human is never truly finished. Now, the time for watching and wondering is over. It is time for your own consciousness, that strange and precious light, to rest. Let the darkness be a soft blanket, and the silence be a gentle companion. The story is done. The question of where we came from can now fade into the quiet, deeper mystery of your own dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.